curator, and Nacho Nyokpe is a communication expert, our favorite person from the PPAG. Ladies, welcome once again.
Hello. Thank you.
It's like the best part of my Friday is and so it gets better and better. We'll be talking with Moses OK later on in the show. We'll also on the bill, so there's a lot to expect. Do not leave us. If you're going out, take us with you. We're streaming live on Facebook and on YouTube as well. You can also catch us on Twitter. So all the platforms, we are there live. Let's take a quick run through the top stories today, ladies. I'll start with the Daily Graphic. IMF bailout, $3 billion lands in May. Sources say photograph of Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta and Christina Georgieva, who is the managing director of the IMF, pictured with that story. Front page of the Daily Graphic. Fishing close season starts in July. Constituency Watch focusing on Chiana Paga, home to famous Paga Crocodile Pond. So domestic tourism being promoted there. Colleges of Education teachers excel in licensure exam according to a study. Other stories in the Daily Graphic in the inner pages. There is one report about Ghana. That's not very pleasant. U.S. agency details human rights abuses in Ghana, page 26. We'll be getting the details of that. The Finder newspaper also talking about the IMF board approval. But the Finder is saying it's expected in June, as against the Daily Graphic sources that said it's expected in May. So a month difference in the story there. Domestic debt exchange program also dominating the front page of the Finder newspaper. The Ghanaian Times, new deadly mosquito found, page 11 of the paper, talking about how the mosquito transmits parasites that pose greatest risk of severe illness and death. The story is attributed to the Ghana Health Service. We'll see if we can get some more details for you. The Informer joins the table. NDC, NPP political theatricals. The Peace Council is intervening in that situation. A race for NDC presidential candidate Hama boasts, and he's saying, without me, party can't win election. But Kojo Bonsu says, lie. Mental health, not mental illness. Psychologist is explaining that mental health is not mental illness. Ghana's inclusion on UK's recruitment red list changes nothing. The Ghana Medical Association is speaking here. And GUTA, the traders union, entreating traders to adjust prices following inflation fall. So these stories and more we'll be looking at here at the table. Our team are out and about in town, and we'll be getting some reports from location with Alan and Jay a bit later on. All in this package of headlines. The ladies are seated. And as we do, I'll start with your rant for the day. Who wants to go first?
Okay, so maybe I will.
Okay.
All right, so mine is not necessarily a rant, but to add my voice to calls from, Ghanaians that we are worried about recent developments about how the SIM card registration has gone on or is going on. And so for many of us who are very active on social media, we chanced upon a video where a journalist in another media house was saying that, well, so, just out of some intuition, he decided to visit his telco and to find out how many SIM cards are registered in connection with his Ghana card. And then the revelation, he says, is staggering. He wouldn't want to share details, just to cause fright and unnecessary tension. And we've also heard from the NCA having said that, well, so by end of April, we should expect a short code so that we are able to tell how many numbers are actually connected to our SIM. Now, the worry is that I thought that we are actually consolidating all our data as a country, as a people, into one very perfect database or near perfect system. Here I mean the Ghana card, so that we wouldn't have to battle this issues of, for example, impersonation. Because once my SIM is registered with your name, I'm impersonating you, and that's a crime. And so I thought that with the coming of the Ghana card, we actually bringing to the barest minimum some issues of data crime. But it's actually a cause for worry for everybody. Now we are hoping that, just like the NCA said, they will make good their word by end of April, because of course I'm worried. I'm like, hey, so what if somebody has actually used my Ghana card details to register a SIM? But 2 or 3 things come to mind. The first one is that, could it be that misplaced Ghana card? So of course I misplaced my wallet and then somebody picks up and use my Ghana card. That I really can't think far about that. That is one. 2, I think it's also born out of maybe an attempt by the telcos to stay in business. Because mind you, when the NCA or the Communication Ministry says that for as many Ghanaians who do not register their SIM, they will be blocked. In as much as it affects myself as a Ghanaian, because I wouldn't be able to make calls or stay in touch with you or to stay in touch with Akosia. It is also the telco that I'm subscribed to that is, being taken out of business. So that the telco would go the extra mile to make sure that it is in business. And so the journalist on social media says that when you go through the process, they may tell you that it wasn't successful at a first attempt. How sure are you it wasn't successful? How sure are you that? So the first one that was deemed as unsuccessful was actually successful, and then you are taken through another process with your details captured to register another SIM, so that, as purported, the telco can sell to stay in business. And so I think it is a worry, but we are calmed also by the words of the NTA that by April latest they will bring a short code. But if the short codes do not also come by end of April, what that means is that we are calling Ghanaians back to queue at the points of registration of these SIMs. Because by end of April, I don't hear anything. Maybe from 1st May, I should go to the telcos that I'm subscribed to, so that I'm sure that nobody bears my name on a SIM, and no crime is committed. That does not belong to me, and nobody, for example, use that SIM to actually fester a crime. And at the end of the day, once details are checked on, for example, a SIM that has been used to scam somebody, or a SIM that has been used to send a threatening text, it is actually tracked to Nacha and Yope. Meanwhile, I don't even own that SIM. I have never seen that SIM, and I have not actually instructed anybody or sanctioned the registration of that SIM with my Ghana card. And so for me this morning, it's a worry. But like I've said, we are calm by the words of the NCA. Their words. Thank you, Thelma.
Thank you. So there are some SIM card vendors who are also complicit in this, because they collect people's data. I remember the times when the few months when you had to show your Ghana card to send Momo or to collect money from the vendor or something of the sort. And they would collect data, and people expressed worry and said, listen, how safe is this information that we are passing on to this party? That is not the telco. The telco has a legal obligation to keep your data, store it in a certain way. But that vendor who is at the traffic light on the Safacheneti Road, who is just in a little side business, how are they equipped to manage the tons of information that they collect from their customers? And so all these things come to bear. I think that the fact that there are crimes being committed with these spam messages and these scams, it means that all of us should be very, very involved. And hopefully by April, as the National Communications Authority is saying, we will have a short code so you can check what numbers are registered in your name using your Ghana card. And if you find that there is a number that you don't recognize, then perhaps you'll be able to disregister, unregister, or unsubscribe from that number. So let's see where that goes. So that's NAS rant for today. Ako?
Yes, and thank you so much for that. Charlie, I think my first rant is about myself. How I could forget how cold these studios could be. And I was looking at how nice and shiny this gold shirt was. Hey, I'm freezing. Anyways, in my work as a culture curator, today what I want to talk about is to promote International Jazz Day. So International Jazz Day is celebrated in the month of April. So the whole month is actually dedicated to celebrating jazz. It's declared by UNESCO to highlight jazz and its role in uniting people all over the world. And so I just want to, bring that up today. At Alliance Francaise, we are actually celebrating the concert like we do normally every year. It's a 2-day concert, and we have 2 maestros from Ghana that I think people should definitely come and watch. First off is Victor Day Jr., who is a well-known jazz man in Ghana and maestro at the game. He was Musician of the Year at the Vodafone Music Awards Ghana in 2014. He's performed in Belgium, the Netherlands, Qatar, Sao Tome, the USA, Liberia. We also have Kwame Yeboah, who is a multi-instrumentalist, also performing, and he is Charlie, his list, he's worked with Craig David, Shaggy, Miss Dynamite, Jamie Scott, Ryan Benson, Osibisa, and he's going to be performing with his band during the concerts 28th and 29th of April at Alliance Francaise. There's also going to be an art exhibition. It's a jazz and art exhibition, so visual artists are going to be, creating whatever images they can come out with art. Workshops for people who are interested in learning how to do music, workshops with Victor Day Jr. himself. So anyone who is a beginner or practitioner, if you want to learn piano, sound engineering, we are having a range of workshops going on. So that's what I wanted to share this morning.
And let me assure you that it won't rain. I mean, we
in
the makeup room, we're talking
no
about
rain.
Are you meteorologist?
Just give us luck.
I think someone mentioned that there's the likelihood of rain this evening.
Yes.
Then of course you scream, hey, so I'm like, Ako, are you okay? Said, because I have a concert tonight.
Yes.
And so have my assurances that it won't rain.
It was from the Ghana men said our friend Felicia Hafere was giving details to Matiti during the news. But hey, hopefully you get fair weather for that conversation. Fair weather for Ghana in the area of economics, and we are told that the indicators are looking up and we are likely to be out of the woods sooner rather than later. The Daily Graphic carrying the story of the IMF and about how Ghana is sure to land the $3 billion it's petitioning that Bretton Woods institution. And Daily Graphic sources are saying possibly in May we'll get it. Other newspapers saying, the Ghanaian Times saying perhaps in June, but the Graphic is certain that Ghana is set to secure the final approval for its $3 billion bailout program from the International Monetary Fund, IMF, next month. 2 officials with deep insights into the talks have revealed to the paper. They explained that the positive development came after the country tapped into the goodwill of the IMF and key bilateral creditors to fast-track the debt restructuring process. They said financial assurance from bilateral creditors, which is the last hurdle for the country, was due later this month to pave the way for the request to be presented before the IMF Executive Board in Washington, D.C., United States, for consideration and approval next month. So we'll be seeking to understand what that means a bit more. Remember, the Graphic is giving us more details. Last month, Ghana held 2 meetings with China. In Ghana and China, during which the finance minister and his team they impressed on China to come along with the Paris Club members to restructure Ghana's bilateral debt. China also attended the initial meeting of the Paris Club in Washington, D.C., and is participating in another round on the sidelines of the spring meetings. Remember, that's happening also in Washington, D.C. this week. Milestones achieved ahead of the presenting Ghana's staff level agreement on IMF bailout program to the executive board include a domestic debt restructuring program, which obtained over 80% participation rate, and the passage of the 3 revenue bills that are expected to rake in over 4 billion Ghana cedis revenue annually. And the country approached the IMF in June last year for a program to support its economic recovery after internal and external factors buoyed by the COVID-19 pandemic and combined to wreak havoc on the economy. So details in the Daily Graphic, page number 3. Ladies, we are close and we are being told that very soon we should get some monies coming in. Does that make, are you relieved by some of these suggestions? The Ghanaian Times talking about June, but hey, a couple of months at the very least is what the papers are saying, and then we'll see some money coming in to support our recovery.
I mean, we've all been waiting for this. We knew this was going to be dragged for a while. They said March at first, now it's gone to May, now it's going to June. We're all waiting with bated breath. But I feel like with all of this, the sacrifice has been as the citizens, because the 3 bills that you mentioned, it's all of these is the weight that is going to be carried by the citizens. The debt restructuring, we saw all the the complaints and people that are going to have to suffer for this. So we are the ones bearing the burden for what's happening. And typically you'd expect, and we want good governance to be in such a way that the burden is not on the citizens to carry, but the government finds a way to actually make burdens easier for citizens so life is easier. So all I'll say is we're waiting for this, but if the money does come, is the trust again we keep mentioning, right? When the money comes, how is this going to be managed? How are they going to bring economic stability and not make this a selfish project, or we hear misappropriation of funds in this way or that way? With the way we are suffering, imagine in a year or 2 years that we hear that, oh, these funds were misappropriated. How would you feel? And I feel like that's the work the government has to do, and also restoring trust in what they are doing. That's also the part of it that I feel we've not talked about as much. But bearing the burden of this, we shouldn't take it lightly. We are the ones bearing the cost for this, and so therefore we must demand accountability for these funds that are coming in, very rigorously. Rigorous accountability
is what Akosua is saying. The Ghanaian Times talking about Ghana expecting the IMF loan approval by June, accrediting it to the finance minister. And they're saying that Mr. Ken Ofori-Atta was speaking in the presentation yesterday, and the story is talking about how the country secured a staff-level agreement with the IMF for the 3 billion support package in December, but the fund requires bilateral lenders to provide assurances that they will restructure its debt as a condition of signing off on the loan. So those have been the engagements that the government and the government officials have been doing at the Paris Club meetings and now at the spring meetings in Washington, D.C. We've reached out to an associate professor at the University of Ghana Business School, Professor Lord Mensah, to help us further understand what this means for the future of Ghana's economy. Mensah, thank you for joining us.
Your call has been put on hold.
I think we're on hold on that line, but I'll take Natra, I'll take your initial reactions and then we'll try. Oh, he's on now. Perfect. Prof, good morning. Thank you for making time to be with us once again this morning. I think you should. We're still on hold, producer. So let's see if he can unhold us, and then we can have that conversation. Now, so May, June, July, sooner or later, money is coming. What are your expectations?
Yeah, so for me, I think I won't go with May, I won't go with June, but like you said, soon. And soon, like you said, what may be soon may not be soon to someone else. But we just hope that soon the money comes. What for me has been impressive is that I think maybe we all didn't know, but now we know that Ghana enjoys a certain level of goodwill. I mean, in the face of the IMF, you could tell, yesterday we were listening to all the MDs that spoke, you could tell that, of course, Ghana enjoys some level of goodwill. And that, I think, it's a pat on our shoulder that we have done well. My worry is how for example, IMF boss thinks that it is entirely Russia, Ukraine, and COVID-19 that has led us here. Okay, and to actually say that it hasn't got anything to do with mismanaging. Well, personally, I disagree. You may say that maybe COVID had a way, because even as individuals, some were laid off, some stayed at home. So you could tell that COVID, for example, had a role to play. As for the war, I doubt. I mean, it never can. I don't think so. But to say that it is entirely Russia-Ukraine war and to say it is entirely COVID, I think I don't agree. In the words of Mr. Ken Ofori-Atta, he stated that the IMF so that they would be able to restore public debt sustainability and ensure full financing for the program. And he's also looking forward to discussions with the international bondholders and commercial creditors. See, so yesterday I was learning something that, for example, if I owe you Thelma and I owe Akosua, and I want you to forgive me my debt, I want Akosua to forgive me. You are thinking in your mind that if I forgive her the 10 cedis that she owes me, is she not going to use the same money to pay Akosua? You get what I mean? And so I think at this point, what Ghana needs to manage very well is information. To say that, see, we are coming clean. When you forgive me, whether it's any of the parish clubs, whether it's the Chinese bloc or the commercial lenders, let's be clean with them to say that, well, so if it is Telma's money and you forgive me, it is for the good of the people of Ghana, all right, to get our economy working, but not necessary to use the money, okay, to pay Akosua. Now, finally, if we receive the money, like I've said, soon, initially, like Akosua stated, they said March, and then now someone said May, and then June, but for me, soon, all right. If the money comes, see, prudence is key. Let's be very prudent. Let the Ghanaian who has, for example, stood with the government to say that, well, you said we wouldn't go, but today you are fronting and we are there. Okay, let the Ghanaians who government has told us have agreed to restructure domestic debt. Let us heave a sigh of relief.
Yes.
Let us not go back to clinging at it to say that, wow,
Facts.
so you put us through this, we have the money, and we are back actually to nothingness. I think it will pain Ghanaians the more. And so, I mean, we are there already. The best we can do is to still stand with the government. Well, so you are there, we have money. And once the money hits the account, please, they should remember all of us. Thank you, Thelma.
I doubt any personal account will be getting notifications, but hey, let's get a notification from Professor Lord Mensah, Associate Professor of the University of Ghana Business School. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning.
Great. We just want to understand, now that there appears to be a sooner rather than later deadline or expectation looming for the monies to be released, or for an agreement to be reached for that money to be released, what are your expectations? Do you think that we've brought ourselves onto a good place and we are ready to move on past our woes as a country?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the dynamics of the economy, typically the economy got eaten. And any economy that gets eaten, it must pull up. And I'm happy with started putting in some measures that has started, the economy gradually in anticipation of the IMF rescue. But then I can tell you that the money you are talking about may not be in May, and it may not be in early part of June. Let's look at somewhere early July. That is when we can concretely say that, yes, indeed, we're going to get IMF. For the IMF money, I see the money is not a problem. Let's try to compare our budget deficit for this year, that were the budget that was read. Budget deficit was 55 billion Ghana cedis. Now, convert that to, exchange rate dollars in Ghana here. You will come to understand that it's almost the same as the 3 billion that we are going for from the IMF. It's nothing new. The money won't do anything. But then, of course, somebody will say, but let me tell you that what normally helps Ghana when we engage IMF is the soft benefit that we get from IMF. The soft benefit, which is the financial discipline, for which we lack the political will, is self-financial discipline. So then we need a certain headmaster, a certain, external entity to control, to check our budget every now and then, so that we can cut our coat according to, our size. When we go to IMF, what do they tell us? They tell us to raise more revenue, put up revenue enhancement, and then to cut down expenditure. Have we seen a signal of cutting down expenditure in this country? Left and right. Have we seen a signal of cutting down expenditure when it comes to, commitment from the executive of this country? We've not seen all this. But then, looking at the economic side, the monetary side, and then the fiscal side, we're trying to put in measures. Taxes have been introduced. We're looking at possibly the monetary policy committee trying to, encourage the monetary policy rate to ensure that it controls inflation. In this country, we've seen inflation coming down, and it's being driven by food inflation, which I attribute to nature, because this times of the year we see plantain on the street, because this year the rain lasted for long. And if you go on the street, you see a lot of plantain. It's not policy-driven, kind of food inflation that we are recognizing. So put all together, you should understand that Ghana, will be blessed, but then we lack that kind of political will to manage this country to a level where we'll stop borrowing unnecessarily. So, you ask me, the timing, all the times that have been given, March, and then now shifted to May, the finance minister's question yesterday from Washington indicated that they are likely to get things. But the document I have chanced upon, July is even, part of it that we are likely to get this program. And we should appreciate the diversity of our creditors. The creditors we have are diverse. 18 block creditors like China, who have never been part of any of the Paris Club or the London Bank Club and all this. They've never been in it. So there's no clear framework as to how we're going to engage even China on debt restructuring. The Chinese themselves, the first country that defaulted on Chinese loan is Zambia. And they struggled for about 2 years before they got a deal with China. If you come to the Western Bloc, they are lucky that this Paris Club have experience. Countries have borrowed from them and they've defaulted. So at least the experience can speed up that kind of relationship. But now we need what we call creditor coordination. Creditor coordination in the sense that all creditors must sit at the spot or sit at the round table for them to know Ghana's situation, lay it back to them so that they all have the same levels of information, that one will not think, okay, fine, we are giving you debt relief, and then you are going to use it to pay China. And China will also not think that when we give you the debt relief, they are going to use it to pay, the Paris Plan. So effectively, we should appreciate all these dynamics. It's quite complex. I mean, if you start in the podium, you're going to get a deal by, IMF board approval. But the board approval is contingent on your debt restructures. If you come to the financial space, you should understand that IMF is also a creditor to Ghana. A creditor in different shapes. IMF believes that Ghana is getting insolvent. We don't have money, but then we have assets. So effectively, why don't you pump in more money into Ghana, give them, kind of rules so that they can manage for them to lift themselves up and pay off, their restructured debt. And remember, the IMF will not give you money to go and pay your debt. So before you even go to IMF, you have to make sure that you have restructured your debt. And that is what we are doing now. And so, the complexity of our creditors, we shouldn't think we can have that kind of overnight, engagement with them. They may have to even sign an MOU and then commit to the MOU so that at least they follow suit what the MOU says. So it's not an overnight thing.
So, Prof. Mensah, help us understand. If we can't take the monies that we are saving as a country from our debt restructuring with one country to pay another, what would an understanding like that look like? Do they want to receive assurances that perhaps once they save us that money, we'll put them towards a certain project? Is that what an MOU of that nature would entail? Like a detailed plan of how much we are spending on exactly what project, if they should decide to give us that room to operate?
Well, the bilateral debt, we should get engagement with them. And then it turns up that you get a debt restructuring. Debt restructuring will not give you any relief. You are still committed to serving your debt or paying your debt. But just that the timing has been changed, and possibly the coupons, regular coupons that you be paying will also reduce, which will give us that kind of a free space on your balance sheet as a country. If we look at the budget that we made, the commitment that we're supposed to make for interest payments will reduce because of what? The debt restructuring. And as a result of that, government will have that kind of, excess money to pump into, maybe infrastructure that will generate more revenue to pay off this, restructured debt. That is the essence of it.
And what should Ghanaians expect in the coming days, and what should we see on the financial side? We've seen the introduction of the 3 revenue bills. We are being told that March inflation is expected to come down to about 45%. Guta is asking traders to slash down prices because that hasn't happened, even though over the last 2 or so pricing windows, we've seen prices falling. What should the ordinary Ghanaian expect in the midst of all this?
Yeah, of course, it's quite complex. We should be happy as Ghanaians that the global prices of fuel has, started coming down, and you can see clearly that it's feeding into our inflation that is coming down. And then also, if you look at the happenings on the ground, clearly it gives you the signal that if we are able to put in measures, right, to be self-financially disciplined, there's a dividend for it. But then it will go with pain. Government may not be, spending vigorously like it used to be. But that is, economic management. When you spend your way through economic management and the economy gets eaten, you stop spending. And that should be able to, tame down the heat and bring some cold into the space. So for me, I think they should brace themselves. We're going to get IMF program, but then it's not immediate. And we should understand that when IMF comes in, there are conditions. And those conditions are quite stringent, and obviously it's going to affect one or two pockets. And we've started, some of the measures. If you look at the 3, tax handles that have been introduced in addition to the existing one, it is a revenue enhancement and it's a requirement by that, because that is what even made us get, the SAP program with us, because the SAP program was contingent on putting up some revenue enhancement measures and cutting down expenditure. The problem has to do with cutting down expenditure. That is what we are not getting the political will to do. And so, for me, if you ask me, yes, it's going to be tough, but how long will the difficulty last? Is what we Ghanaians must ask. So if we don't take care and we continue in that manner, there's going to be that kind of loss of trust in the system. Because Ghanaians, now what we are looking out for is, okay, fine, we are all going to sacrifice, as the finance minister has been indicating to us, burden sharing. So how long are we going to share the burden? How long are we going to sacrifice as Ghanaians? Is it going to be 1 or 2 years? That will depend on how we utilize the benefits of, this economic reformation, i.e., the debt restructuring and all the things that we are going through.
Prof. Mensah, when you talk about loss of trust, that appears to be the case in some circles in Ghana. But when you listen to the Bretton Woods institutions that we are in these talks with, they seem very upbeat about indicators and about how we are going to recover from this. Does that come to you as a surprise, considering that from what you're saying, there's a certain lack of trust on the Ghanaian side, but the international bodies and the international partners appear to have a lot of confidence that we will get out of this?
Yeah, it has to do with the perspective. If you look at the international body, it's sitting somewhere, looking at Ghana as a kind of a bucket. If you're sitting outside the bucket, and then you decide on how the bucket should look like. Those particles in the bucket, no doubt they are hitting each other. Those particles in the bucket knows, the kind of roads they are driving on. Those particles in the bucket knows how their investment has been slashed. Those particles in the bucket. You see, I'm talking about a typical Ghanaian who moves up and down. Somebody would say, if you look at a forest from afar, you might think, the forest looks green. But when you get in there, you realize that this Bretton Woods institutions are looking at the economy from, outside. But then I don't blame them, because the Ghanaian economy in aggregation has assets. We have a lot of investment. All that we need to do is to harness, this, investment, and then create cash flows out of it that will be able to be used to satisfy, our debt. So it's not an economy that has been to war, that everything has come to a halt. In that case, you may not have hope in it. But then it's an economy that, have the pace. I mean, let me put it that way. But in an economy that is insolvent, that means an economy that has no cash immediately to pay for itself. But if you give it time, it should be able, with certain conditions, it should be able to pay for itself. So that's how they are looking at the economy. While the typical Ghanaian is looking at how long do I stay in traffic to go to work? I mean, how long my salary lasts when I receive it, at the end of the month. It used to be 3 weeks. Now it's just 1 week. The money is finished. By the time I buy fuel has taken half of my salary. All those are things. Those things are things that goes through the minds of a typical Ghanaian, which is different from a Bretton Woods institution. And even if a personnel from a Bretton Woods institution comes to Ghana, it's domiciled somewhere in the high street. It doesn't go off road like we go off road on our daily basis, which we complain of good roads and bad. So it's a perspective. I mean, how we look at the economy, from different eyes. But then there's hope.
Professor, thank you for your time with us this morning.
You're welcome.
Professor Lord Mensah is Associate Professor at the University of Ghana Business School, sharing his thoughts on Ghana's soon to come on stream $3 billion IMF loan approval. Finance Minister is saying sometime in June. The Daily Graphic report saying perhaps in May. But the experts we are talking to telling us we are more likely to get it towards July. So soon, as the ladies have said, I'll take your final comment on this, having listened to the experts, and then we'll move on to other stories that may have caught your attention this week.
Well, so from what Prof. Mensah said, that because of our budget deficits, it means that this $3 billion bailout would, it will do nothing. It's worrying. But he also added that, of course, even the sea, it rains into it. And so let's hope that in as much as it will do nothing, maybe it will do something, maybe, slightly, and something we could make do with. It's worrying that it will do nothing with all this effort, because of course we have budget deficits, and of course our expenditure are high. We are not cutting and stuff like that. But well, let's wait for the money.
Money is what Na says. Akosia.
I think he really laid out for us the complexities of all of this. For instance, his mentioning of the diversity of the creditors, his answering how he answered your question on the perspective, and I thought that was a really great question. The perspective from the foreign institutions into Ghana, and then the perspective of the Ghanaian. So basically, they're looking at the machine, and how he described it was telling us the little bits in the machine and how they work, and the little bits are the Ghanaian who is going to work, look at how much they spend on fuel from the salary they make, all the things that he laid out, these little screws that make the big machine that the foreign institutions are looking at and thinking, oh, this can be solvent. And we are those little bits, and therefore it made me really think about, back to the point that if we are going to be getting these loans, right, and the money is going to come in, from what he said, it's going to come in, but it's just going to service another thing. So is left.
So what are we sweating over?
What are we sweating over? What we should be sweating over is the long-term revolutionizing of this economy. Being able to now produce more of our own, reducing our imports, now exporting more. And this is a long-term development plan that should be in place in spite of the government that's on. It should be in place now as we're going to IMF. It should be in place next 10 years, 20 years before now. It should have been in place. So we then know, and that's how we can have that surety that even though we are in this hardness in this time, we know what has been created in the system, that within the next year, 2 years, the kind of economy we are building, where we are going to be having more factories, producing our own toothpicks, producing our own whatever, we know that we won't come to this place again. So I appreciate that, and I hope that as Ghanaians, whenever we're having this conversation, that's the accountability we raise to our leaders. How are you making what long-term structures are you building for our economy in this way?
Right. There's a new mosquito in town.
Hey,
and it's very much related to the Anopheles mosquito that we know, but this one has a surname. It's called Anopheles stevensi. So Anof Steve. Ghanaian Times, page 11, detailing the story. Health alert: new deadly mosquito found transmits malaria parasites that pose greatest risk of severe illness and death, according to the Ghana Health Service. Story goes, a new invasive mosquito species said to be deadlier than the traditional Anopheles mosquitoes, which transmit malaria, has been identified in the country. Anopheles stevensii, first detected on the African continent in 2019, is known to transmit 2 malaria parasites. So the Plasmodium, I need Serophoria health reporter to help pronounce it. Plasmodium falciparum and Plasmodium vivax, which pose the greatest risk of severe illness and death from malaria. According to the Ghana Health Service, the strain was confirmed in March this year from samples taken in Tuba and Dansoman, all suburbs of in the Greater Accra region, thereby cautioning the public to take immediate steps to protect themselves from mosquito bites. There's a quote with a story. Anopheles stevensii can practically breed in almost all sources of water, which is not the traditional breeding site of the common Anopheles species. It survives in extremely high temperatures during the dry season, when malaria transmission usually declines. It is known to be very invasive, spreads fast, and adaptive to a myriad of climate conditions, and shown to be resistant to multiple insecticides classes in many locations, posing challenges in its control. So they are quoting a statement issued by the Ghana Health Service to all regional health directors, and this statement was cited by the Ghanaian Times. So in order to mitigate spread of the vector and sustain gains made in the malaria fight, the statement authorized the DG, Dr. Patrick Kumar Boaji, and a national task force has been established to advise on strategies to minimize its impact across the country. And he's charging the regional and district health directors to implement a number of measures, including the removal of water collection points. I'm taking time to read these things so that you take some actions. Removal of water collection points in and around homes and communities to minimize breeding sites. The DG further urging the general public to use insecticide-treated nets to protect themselves against indoor mosquito bites, use repellents, wear clothes which protect them against mosquito bites when outside the home is another advice. According to projections by the World Health Organization, WHO, a stevensii could put additional 126 million people in Africa at risk of malaria if spread of the mosquito vector is unchecked. So far, the mosquito species have been detected in countries including Ethiopia, Sudan, Somalia, Nigeria, and other places in sub-Saharan Africa. Ghana continues to make breakthrough in the fight against malaria and has become the first country, if you've been listening to the news, to approve of a new malaria vaccine from the Oxford University in the UK. So the R21 Matrix M has been approved for use in children aged between 5 and 36 months who are at the highest risk of death from the disease, and it becomes the second malaria vaccine to be approved under the Malaria Vaccine Implementation Program in Ghana. So I've taken time to read the story in its entirety so that you would have an idea of what we are dealing with here. I must say that we've reached out to the Ghana Health Service to understand what this directive means, and they will get back to us in due course. If not on today's program, perhaps in our subsequent ones, we will be able to get you some answers. But Charlie, malaria.
Malaria, and it's deadly. And so for me, I think two major concerns. One is that we've been asked to ensure removal of water collection sites, so deposits of water that we have around. And with the fact that the rains are here, it makes this stevensii, it gives it an opportunity to thrive.
Yes.
And the fact that it also breeds in all sources of water, including the sea. So I was wondering, as salty as it, can it also breed? Maybe when you have the Ghana Health Service, I'm a coastal girl. Yeah. So what I'm saying is that, and so if it breeds on the sea, those of us who live, we share boundaries with the sea. What is the risk for us? What more should we do? And so the water collection point is one. The other thing is that I don't know whether so with the approval of the vaccine, then our children are safe. I don't know if you understand what I mean. And so this new malaria is here, type of malaria is here, and then we have a vaccine also here. It just may not be mere coincidence. If that is what would actually...
So it's one of the questions we should ask the Ghana Health Service, because these vaccines were, they were cooked, they were brought into being with or without Anopheles stevensii in mind. So are they effective against this new strain this new species of mosquito that's in town? Some of the questions we need to ask.
And so let's take all the precautionary measures. Let's sleep in a treated mosquito net. Let's use repellents, all right? And then let's cover our skins.
And those of us who complain that the nets are hot, they are coming for us. The stevensies are coming for us. So by all means, a host of things we've been told to do there, and let's try to do them. Akosua, what are your thoughts?
I mean, there's nothing more I can add. It's just always interesting to hear this type of news, especially because things evolve. The Anopheles was going to evolve, and it's interesting to see what it has evolved to be. And when I say interesting, it's because my whole family are health people. They are doctors, pharmacists. So for us, this is like a studying of science, of all of that. But obviously, we also have to evolve for it. So therefore, I mean, just looking forward to the vaccines. And Ghana has actually had a really good fight against malaria. We have a good record against that. So I trust in what our Ghana Health Service is going to do. And we ourselves as citizens, by now, I mean, in the 90s, I remember a lot of adverts about how to, protect against malaria. Don't leave water in the open.
I remember the
right?
Malaria Free Future campaign. And there was this whole song. There was an advert that rolled on TV constantly. And it was how you can do that. I mean, if I remember the lyrics to the song correctly, about removing the breeding places of mosquitoes, like stagnant waters in pots and pans, and stagnant waters everywhere, sleep in the mosquito treated nets. And so all of that, we need to go back to those days. We need to bring back those campaigns so that people know that they can do something to prevent malaria. I know a couple of people, close family members, who have got malaria recently. So stevensii has beaten you. Next time, let's keep the environment clean, clear all those stagnant water bodies that are breeding places. Those of us who live near rivers and lakes, the Korle, the Odo. Guys, let's get more actively involved. I personally want to just entreat pregnant women to take better care of themselves, new moms especially. Take care of those babies and let the toddlers play, but then apply repellent. I hear there are local remedies to sack mosquitoes. So in my time growing up, my grandma would take us. We are outside telling stories, and there's palm kernel burning in the background. There are orange peels burning in the background, and we were told that all these things would repel mosquitoes. We should revive those campaigns and see if there's any scientific basis to them, and encourage more people to. Not everybody can afford a repellent. So what can we do apart from insecticides and all that? What ways can we adopt to fight malaria in our homes? Me, I'm a girl girl, so drink intention. You know the kenke juice. Just drink more. You'll be fine. Let it ferment very well, and then you drink. The malaria clear.
And we should have running water. We should have running water so that people would not have to store, and then that becomes a breeding place for things. But that's also a structural problem. I know our water comes like during the week 2 or 3 days. Then you for another week before, so you have to store till it comes again. And now I'm thinking, after 1 week, 2 weeks, when you go, you see the surface, dirty. So and sometimes things are there. So
it's funny because storing water itself becomes an avenue for mosquitoes to thrive. So what I've seen some people do in some homes is that they always cover the water. So if the bucket has a cover, then that works. But if it doesn't, find some kind of plastic and recycles. Many people buy sachet water these days. So the bag that the sachet water comes in, you can split it and just cut it in a way that makes it bigger and use that to cover the surface. I've seen people do it in a number of places, and I think it works. So we are all just trying to find ingenious ways to not create breeding places for Anopheles stevensii. Tuntum na odi huhu sare. Tontro ogbe offensive. Protect ourselves against those. Guta, ladies, is on a roll, asking its traders. This week we talked to Guta about how prices on the market have not decreased, despite the fact that as soon as there's fuel price hike up. So the Informer newspaper is telling us March 2023 inflation rate is going to drop sharply to 45%, and so it's attributed to affect food and non-alcoholic beverages group and the non-food inflation. Significant drop due to the level of increase recorded in a few months after it declined to 52.8% in February. Remember that our inflation was upwards of 54% just a short while ago, dropped to 52.8% in February 2023. Now we are seeing another fall to 45% in March, and according to data from the GSF, by 8.3% in March to 50.8%, and also non-food inflation fell to 40.6% in March. Basically, food prices started coming down, is what those indicators would say. But have you seen a corresponding decrease in the prices of your goods and services on the market? Some, in fact, most people say no. So GUTA, the Ghana Union of Traders Association, is urging members in this story on page, what's this page number 6 of the Informer newspaper, calling on all members of the business community to respond positively to changing the trend in business and adjust prices to reflect this. The union has observed the efforts government and the Bank of Ghana, for that matter, are making towards reducing the cost of doing business as inflation is down, while the exchange rate has improved. On Wednesday, April 12, the GSS announced that March inflation at 45%, and it's down from 52.8%. GUTA urged government to continue the efforts to take advantage of the reintroduction of the exchange rates to further reduce inflation and other costs of doing business in the country, just calling on people who sell, and said that, listen, government has put a lot in place, a lot has happened to make the market fairly, stable for traders, and really, fairly, the consumer should benefit from that, because when the exchange rate is up, when fuel prices are up, almost by the minute, prices are up. So let's hear from what GUTA said to traders.
The Ghana Union of Traders Association, GUTA, has applauded the government and the Bank of Ghana for working towards reducing the cost of doing business. This, GUTA indicates, has been evident with the decline in inflation and the improvements in the exchange rate. In a release by the president of the Ghana Union of Traders Association, GUTA, Dr. Joseph Obeng, the efforts by government can only be sustained if factors such as the appreciation of the cedi is also sustained, customs valuation rate is adjusted to reflect the current trends, and the monetary policy rate is reduced by the central bank to give meanings to the gains chalked so far. The association also called on the government to manage speculations in order not to reverse the positive gains made so far. GUTA entreated all members of the business community to respond positively to the changing trends and adjust their prices to reflect the exchange rate and the decline in inflation.
That was a GBC News report on that story. Ladies, what do we think? GUTA, right to make the call?
Yes.
Oh, definitely.
So I think the call is right. But Thelma, you know why the call won't get anywhere? It is because my observation is that we have a very largely unregulated pricing. I mean, when I stock my shop, I decide how much to sell it, looking at the factors of my production. And when Akosia does same, Akosia prices her, for example, her products and services based on her, the factors of production. And so, for example, it's dependent on how much I pay my staff. I want to price like that, how much it took me to get the things to my shop. And
where you've rented your shop.
Where you've rented your shop and all that. And so, because the market is unregulated, the calls will come. But people cannot listen. Because once I listen, you're actually taking me steps back in my business. Someone will say that I have stopped already before the inflation fell. And then I have also come to observe that inflation
stock already before the exchange rate goes up. They are able to add the increases to their products and services, but not a reduction.
That's the typical Ghanaian business person for you. It must be profit at all costs. It must be profit at all costs. See, the person estimates that, okay, so if I go to stock my shop at let's say 8 cedis for the product, I'll sell it at 12, right? And so even if the old stock, okay, I was selling at, for example, 10, and this is 12, you go and pick another and then you get it at less, and then it is now, for example, 7, you have to sell it at 10. It is not the original price people know. How would a businessman comfortably sit and say that I'm reducing prices of? No, it doesn't happen. It happens only when, let's say, promotional time. So Christmas, the person decides discretion. Even with that, chop now, pay later. That's the typical Ghanaian business person. And so until we are able to regulate our market, this cause won't get anywhere. And also say that I'm sure the market people, not to get to them, maybe they don't understand what the inflation means. I was in Agbogboshi last week to buy tomatoes. I mean, it's out of season, I agree. But Tama, when you see a small bucket of tomato, the person told me it is 200. It's like, but I could count just about 15. 200 Ghana cedis. How much tomato sauce am I going to make? How much of it? And so they in the market they don't even understand. I'm sure you'd have vox pop upon vox pop of asking market women, you see inflation now, but from inflation so they don't even understand what it means. The market is simply unregulated. It's not like in very polished systems where, so like it's a grocery shop and it's regulated by an authority.
By weight. And so you're able to tell the price. Here you go. But again, you should have seen me in my calculation. Hey, it's tomatoes. The way I opened my eyes. Maybe you were wearing your wig, so they added because the women, when you dress a certain way, they charge you more.
No. You see, so I think until we regulate the market, issues like this will stick with us for a long time.
Right. I mean, the discretion from what Nas said just hits it for me. Traders decide on their own, based on their own whimsies and caprices, to say, oh yes, so I'm putting this much margin for profit on it. And it also depends on where you're buying from, because you can buy this bottle of water obviously for 1 or 150 pesos from the streets. If you go to a 4-5-star hotel, you're not going to pay that much for it. So check where you're buying. But when you're at Agbogboshi and the prices are high, then you know that, Charlie,
things are bad.
The thing is hot.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with everything she said. We should definitely look at regulation. I feel Guta making this call is a first step at regulation. What does it then look like in enforcement is the thing, I guess. So I agree. That's
ladies,
what I have to say. Yes.
If I don't talk about this human rights matter before I quickly take a few messages. So on page 26 of the Daily Graphic, there's quite a disturbing, I personally find it disturbing that a UN agency is detailing human rights abuses in Ghana. Page 26, a news desk report for the Daily Graphic. The United States has indicated various Ghanaian state authorities, including security services and agencies, for a list of human rights breaches and abuses, including extrajudicial killings. It cites the 2020 elections-related deaths, which were yet to be unraveled after 2 years of investigation, the bizarre circumstances leading to the death of one Albert Donko, a youth leader in Nkranza in the Bono East region, while he was in police custody, the killing of a protester as chaos followed news of Donko's death in police custody, stressing that, quote, as of November, police had not concluded an internal investigation into both deaths. In its 2022 country report on human rights practices on Ghana, the United States Department of State said significant human rights abuses included credible reports of arbitrary or unlawful killings, including extrajudicial killings, torture or cruel, inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment by the government on or on behalf of the government, arbitrary arrest or detention, serious restrictions on free expression and media, including violence and threats of violence against journalists, and unjustified arrests or prosecution of journalists. And so the story goes into other details, talking about the executive summary, going into details of other examples, prison detentions and conditions. Ladies, how do we feel about this report? Is the UN justice that is making this reports public? Do you think they are fair, and do they represent what we see in our country?
Well, so I think I'm just reading the story. I mean, I'm just listening to the story, and what I noted here is election debt regarding just ended election. If I got 2020 election, and the fact that the police has not told us. I mean, hasn't given us a report yet. And the fact that our media ratings are dropping, it is worrying, and even the state of our prisons. And then let me say that, see, it is the reason why, as a country, if our president says he thinks about the next generation, not the next election, all of us, whether opposition, whether government, we must work towards it and guard our speech and guard our actions to say that this is the rating we have. I mean, to say that about 8 people died in an election and today we can't take for life. Is it because they may not be our relatives? And Thelma, let me use this opportunity to say that in election, right, there is not the need for anybody to even lose a strand of hair to put a political figure in office at the expense of your life. See, don't lose your hair, don't lose your blood, talk less of your life. And so, whilst we get into the 2024 election, these are my thoughts. Let us, as electorates, in order to change this report, this narrative, okay, let us get people into office who have the ideas. I mean, it must be a contest of ideas, not a contest like power struggle. You know, I want to be in power. I want to break the 8 at all costs. I want to, for example, end the 8 at all costs. I mean, you know, it shouldn't be the use of intemperate language. It shouldn't be the use of arms. See, we are not up in arms. It's just the elections we went into. And let's also focus on our prison. See, we are here today. You just may not know where you end up tomorrow. We've seen precedents in prison. Maybe not like we are seeing now. I mean, maybe not like now in Ghana, like I'm saying. What I'm saying is that you don't know where you may be. Let's keep our prisons well. Let our language be temperate. Let us avoid politics of deceit. And the police, we beg. See, Thelma, I have this plea for the police. It first starts with praise. Forgive if I'm being too long. I like the way they'll be able to sanitize our religious space. And we are not hearing any false prophecies. I saw now will die. I saw now will do this. And I saw no. And we haven't heard that since the police said, hey, we are Obeko prison. And so people know that we can still worship God or whatever we worship and still keep a very calm environment and not needless tension won't come up. But politicians, they are thick-skinned and tough skins and they are thick-necked. And the police must have same characteristics to deal with them. From the words we started hearing, and let me just swear to go into Brian's comments a while ago and to say that, see, I've seen double standards in some people. And for example, if someone passes a comment and Ghanaians come at him, no, it was bad, what you said, and then you go, for example, to the police and says, okay, so this person also said this a while ago, Akosia. That is double standards. If we both have the same boss and you come to work late, I never reported you till I came to work late and you went to report me. Then I go to the boss and say that Akosia also came late. Now this is what you are doing. You are reporting the two of us that so we are. And so if the NDC goes to report and the NPP goes to report, then the two of them are telling us that, am I lying? I have done it, he has done it too. So we've come to report ourselves. And the police must deal with both of them. See, they can't charge the environment with needless. It's needless. And at the end of the day, they enjoy. After elections, you see them again. Tell me, you see them again. Those of us who are not politicians, who will be getting the text, oh, I need this. See, when the message is sent to them, they don't answer. Ever again. Is there the need to lose your life? I'm sure if you don't stop me, won't close.
I'm sure.
Okay, so I mean, I definitely agree with everything she said. And what I wanted to say was our human rights are a very important part of democracy. When we're talking about malaria and how to protect and all the things we need to do, our human rights is also a marker of good governance, of a good country. So we take these type of reports very importantly. I know it may seem, why is the U.S. agency detailing our human rights abuses? It's a very big question. So what I'll say is for us to look at ourselves in our community, and definitely we see these abuses, journalists who are killed. And what I want to highlight today is also the prisons, prison detention, the overcrowding that happens, the insanitary conditions, the food. I mean, I've been able to engage with Ghanaian prison systems in a few experiences, and also in my work with human rights, I have done the work to go and visit prisons in other places. In the Netherlands, went to go and visit there. Well, we even visited people who are there for jail time, for life sentence. And prison is not it's not just it's not an easy thing, you know. Of course, where their cubicles is a cubicle. It's not a nice place to be in. But food, we ate lunch with them. We had burgers and fries. We had conversations. You can't even have you can't even eat their lunch. And there are certain things that they do to be able to make the prisoners be able to rehabilitate. So, for instance, the prisoners during weekends, certain people with lesser crimes go home during the weekends and come back so that they can be with their family, be with their partners, and come back. You know, and that way, when it's time for them to go, they are able to rehabilitate into the society. But when you look at our prison systems here, it's like prison is just for let's lock them away and they'll go somewhere. But they are human beings; they don't just vanish. You know, the whole point is to be able to rehabilitate, to bring them back into society so that they can, you know, also live their lives till when they will die. And I think that's something we should place huge importance on. Our human rights are in every sphere of our society is very, very, very important. You can have the best economy, but if your human rights is very bad, for me and for all humanity, it's a zero. So whenever people bring up places like, oh, go to Arabia, can you do certain things there? If you have huge human rights abuses there, it's also a very bad marker of bad governance.
Right. Yeah. I will just pick a few of the messages that you are sending to us, 05555610034. We've talked about a number of issues. The first one on my screen is talking about IMF, and it says measuring restrictiveness of trade policy and labor supply and targeting poverty alleviation programs are indeed the concerns of the IMF now before offloading funds to Ghana in May-June 2023. Good news for Ghana. Alhaji Dawda sent us that message. Only consumers have the power to get price reductions in our market space. When we all opt for a vendor with even the slightest reduction in price and recommend him or her to others, it will gradually get them to start reducing prices. I remember when I was in uni, we'll drive around looking for the petrol station that had 1p off. So the one that sold 0.75 would buy from her against the one that sold 0.76, and people were forced to do that. So I support this one. Please, with the same issues, I believe it must be something must be put in place with the vendors, because if they don't collect bribe, this won't happen. Because they take pictures, that is solely to identify the one on the card. So why this wahala? So this is a good question. If you are taking photos and there are photographs on the ID, why are we in this place? Ghana police can't control politicians because the president appoints his head. Okay. Ask the now to stop shouting and asking politicians to be temperate. Okay, you've spoken your mind. The NPP said they have people. Okay, Patrick said that. Hi BFS, there are experts in Ghana who have been telling government that investment in rice production and development of its value chains alone can generate over $10 billion annually. Why is government not investing in agribusiness, but rather prefer borrowing an increment of taxes? Kennedy Beba Pay, Michael said that from Ashalaja. Mosquitoes is now anemic due to the hard economic conditions because Ghanaians are not producing enough blood for the traditional Anopheles mosquito. And so a more robust and deadlier mosquito has taken over to deal with Ghanaians. Okay. Timothy, thank you for sending your message across to us. Let's all support the NPP government to overcome these challenges. Ghana is the only country we have, and NPP is the only solution. That's according to KK in Kaswa. This is a long one. Aliu Mohammed's speedboat. I'm not quite sure what you mean to say, but I'll perhaps pick this very last one. With how can I reduce the price of an item I bought in January still on the shelf at 100 and to sell it at 120? For example, if the same item has been reduced from 100 from my supplier to 75, do you think I must reduce mine too, still on the shelf since January? But you increase when the price goes up. So if there's a decrease, well, equity, right? Excellent discussions. Where have these ladies been? Non-partisan and direct to the point. Kojo sent us that from Takrady. I think it wraps us up very nicely, ladies. Thank you for joining our conversation today. Kosia Hansen, media personality, artistic activist, and culture curator, as well as Na Uche, new communications expert, our all-time favorite from PPAG. Ladies, once again, thank you. We'll see you again some other time. Exactly. This has been the Headlines Live on GTV Breakfast. We are having other conversations with Moses OK, also Wolasi later on. The show continues after the break. Stay with us.
nsonson ba wo yam a ema wo ho kekao wo ntumi ya wo ya wo no mu nso to wo moja so te
nsonson tumi fa aduane a embeye mfuturo ene note so ene koni pedua mu
Wemplex 400 eye nsonsudura eyema mpenini mofra nyina ubetumi anom na bribia ena honom no brano Wemplex 400 tablet ba coupe be nsonson nyina fri hontem kra roundworm hookworm tapeworm Wemplex 400 kuwon kodo to
Wemplex 400 aboa mene mebusuafo iti wusukoto binom
emma wo ma apemfo ene nkwada wonya mfie mienu enhunu won dokota ansan wafa bi
Wemplex 400
Wemplex 400 asunsuna tamfo FD aje dwede nkratu yatum
Shield Paint is loved and trusted for its excellent quality and value for money. And now Shield is giving you even more. New Shield Gloss Paint